If you'd like to make your NFL games a little more interesting, you've come to the right place. It's the Even Money Podcast with Ross Tucker and Steve Fezzik.
Yeah, Vegas, baby, Vegas. It is the Even Money Podcast, and it is always presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm Ross Tucker, the former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Most of you know this, but you never know. Maybe we got some new people this week that want to get Steve Fezzik's tips on the NCAA Tournament, one of the biggest betting opportunities of the year. We got brackets. We got people betting on these games like crazy. We will get into that momentarily. You can and should follow Steve on Twitter at Fezzik Sports. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL on social media. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. That's pretty much everything, right? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever platform you're on, we are on. I am on at Ross Tucker NFL. More and more people checking out the show via YouTube. YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL is amazing. We'll get to the March Madness stuff in a little bit, Steve. But I did want to get a couple of thoughts from you on what's going on in the NFL right now before we dive into the basketball. Two items in particular we must discuss. Now, I don't know, do any of the books, Steve, have season win totals out yet? Or is it just the Super Bowl odds?
Just Super Bowl odds and division odds are up. So there are some rare division odds that I would be interested in. But as you know, I love betting the season wins. That's 90% of my wagering, and they're not up yet.
Okay, because I was wondering, it hasn't happened yet. We're recording this at 10:27 a.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. But Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback of the Jets. I would be shocked if he's not. And my question is, Steve, is there any way we can take advantage of our belief there? I mean, I don't know that I'm ready to bet the Jets to win the Super Bowl, but maybe Jets to win the division. Maybe they're underpriced right now.
I saw that the Jets' most recent number was around 3-1. And you're right. The second, even though I know he's going to the Jets, he knows that he's going to the Jets. He knows that you know that he's going to the Jets. Everybody knows. So if you want to get in front of that, you can bet 3-1. It's probably going to be like plus 220 after it gets announced officially. So it's probably a safe bet. They still got to beat the Bills. And I don't know. I just remember how good that Peyton Manning was when he was 40 and how good Favre was when he was 40. And then these dudes just fell off the cliff right on their 40th birthday. And Aaron Rodgers is right there. I don't know if I can get there.
That was going to be one of my questions, Steve. Because I've seen your tweets and people are mad at you anytime you pick a college basketball game and your team loses. And you're explaining to them on Twitter at Fezzik Sports the closing line value that you got for them, the edge that they got. It's like people don't understand that this is hard and this is a process. So if you get the Jets at 3-1, Rodgers goes there and they go up to plus 220, is that then a good bet in your mind, or is it still a bad bet? Because you got closing line value, but it's still not quite needle in the haystack, but there's still, the Dolphins are good, the Bills are good, et cetera.
The problem with closing line value in a market that is a needle in the haystack type of bet is that it doesn't mean you've got a plus expected value. I guess the greatest example I can give is, let's say you're betting the NCAA tournament and you put in and you're betting a future on Mississippi State. And I don't even know what the current number is on them. Maybe it's 300-1, and someone gives you 700-1. Well, that's great value, versus the marketplace, but their true odds of winning are 0. So if the true odds are 0, okay, it's not 0. It's probably 0.01%. You get where I'm going. That 700-1 is still, grossly insufficient.
Got it. Anything else that happens in free agency that is of note to you from a betting perspective? because like one I think about is the Rams trading Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins. It's clear as day the Rams are like rebuilding. It's unfortunate in my mind, Steve, that the season win totals aren't out yet. Is there a bet like to win the Super Bowl, Rams? No, because, you and I like to look at this. There are certain teams that very clearly are rebuilding, other teams that are clearly all in, like the Dolphins. I like to try to take advantage of that because you can tell by the moves of some of these teams what they're thinking.
Sure, but I mean, you could look for a yes, no, but it would be like you'd have to bet 100 to win $1. Maybe it's 50 to win $1. It's like you can get the same as a certificate of deposit. If that's the best bet you can find, look harder. Because the Rams are rebuilding and Arizona's a complete rebuild, and San Francisco obviously doesn't look good at quarterback. Seattle 5-1 to win the division stands out.
Anything else that's happened so far in free agency noteworthy enough to jump out to you? I mean, the Bears have spent a lot of money. The Falcons have spent a lot of money. The Broncos have spent a lot of money. Is it of consequence to you or not really?
This is a great question. I will be the first to admit I am behind the curve because I'm not a content provider. I'm not a guy that comes in and updates daily on the NFL. I make my living betting, and I can't bet anything in the NFL. So literally the guys I work with, every minute I spend on podcasts and talking the NFL, they're screaming at me. What are you doing? You're supposed to be making us money. Stop with this content stuff. Do that during the football season when we can actually bet all this stuff. So I apologize. I'm not nearly as up on what's going on than the folks that just live and breathe the NFL 24/7.
Last NFL question before we get to the college hoops, which I know you're all over. There was a big trade between the Bears and the Carolina Panthers. And the Panthers have the number 1 overall pick now. And you and I do very well for our listeners on the NFL draft every year. And, there are some reports out there. The longtime beat writer for the Carolina Panthers says that he believes it's C.J. Stroud. Now, Peter King and Albert Breer have said the Panthers haven't decided yet, blah, blah, blah. But I guess I'm wondering, we do very well on the draft. Is that enough to fire on C.J. Stroud? I think he's minus 220 or something like that. I have to look it up. I'm in Pennsylvania where they don't let you bet on the draft, which bugs me. I think Richardson's like plus 275, the quarterback from Florida. So I guess I'm just curious. When do we fire on that one, Steve? Because I know this is how you operate. You around the NFL draft, you do well and you listen for information, and something like this comes out. A lot of times you're able to jump on it before the line moves.
Yeah, we jump on it when we know exactly what square on the Monopoly board that the Carolina Panthers are going to land on, as Gordon Gekko says. And until we know for sure, we don't play. And I assure you, there will be a day that Carolina basically says, we are going, this is our dude. And then someone in the organization is going to hear, and he's going to tell someone else, and they're going to start betting it. And then it's up to us to get that information first before it becomes publicly available. And we beat the number. That's how you beat the draft. That has not happened yet. So I'm not betting I'm not going to throw a dart, even though it's a likely dart on Stroud. I want to know the certainty of it. And then, nothing's completely certain, but you get where I'm going. And then.
Yeah, understood. All right, let's move on to March Madness and NCAA Tournament. We'll get into how to bet it in a moment, Steve. But the brackets, everybody at their office or with their buddy, everybody has a bracket. Do you have bracket filling out advice?
Yes, it depends how many people are in your bracket. So let's say you're in a small office and there's 10 people. Pick a whole bunch of chalk. Pick mostly favorites. Pick the teams that are going to be favored. You got a great chance to win. You only got to beat 9 other guys. The ideal situation, if you were going heads up against somebody, you take what you expect to be the Vegas favorite in each and every game, and you have an optimal bracket. Now, the bigger your pool gets, the more fun you can have. So let's say you're in a contest with 1 million people. Well, now you can take a 6 seed to win it all. Maybe that team only has 100 to 1 chance, but if there's 100,000 people in your pool, then you can have plus EV, and you can go ahead and grab some dogs and the like. So in general, the bigger the pool, the more fun and the more upsets that you can pick, because you're going to need that to differentiate yourself from the masses.
Interesting. Okay. What if you don't know how many people are in it?
Can't fill out the pool. Don't know. Incomplete and imperfect information. Wait until the deadline and find out how many people have entered.
You know, Steve, last year, I filled this out for Dan Patrick because I fill in for Dan Patrick all the time. So I'm in like the Dan Patrick celebrity bracket tournament. I think I won last year, or else I got second. I just took the higher seed in every single game. I mean, I like college hoops. I'll watch the tournament because I like the tournament. I don't know who any of these kids are hardly. I don't really care that much. It's still, by the way, it's unbelievably entertaining to watch these games without having any knowledge of any of the players or really even caring. I mean, these guys could all be semi-pro Russians for all I know. I have no idea. I'm just, as long as they're in the uniform that says Princeton or NC State or whatever, I'm cool with it, which I think is hilarious. But I just picked the higher seed in every game,
you bring up
and I think I won the tournament.
So this is a great point. So a lot of people do that. They're not following it. So because of that, they're going to take a 7 seed, not a 10 seed, and they're going to take an 8, not a 9, if they're in a hurry and they're just filling out their pool quickly. So all things being equal, check the Vegas spreads right before you submit your pool, and any 9 seed that's favored, any 10 seed that's favored, go ahead and take those teams to win in the first round, because pretty much in every pool, you're going to see, even though the 10 seed is a 2-point favorite, they're only going to get selected like 48% of the time by the public. So you want value versus your competition. And if you can have a 2-point favorite and you're in the minority on the people that are selecting that, there's value.
Got it. That makes sense. So don't just pick the higher seed, because other people will do that. Pick the team, because I've seen like in some of these 7, 8, 9, 10, the lower seed is favored.
Yes. And, and this whole higher seed stuff, as a math guy, it just blows my mind. It's like, they're the higher seed. I'm like, no, the highest seed is at the 1 or the 16. And I'm like, I just short circuit. Yes.
Yeah. What is it?
I always say the better team. I don't know.
Because higher and lower. Got it. All right. Let's do some do's and don'ts, Steve. March Madness style. Give me a don't. Don't do this for March Madness betting.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 don'ts. Don't make big bets on who's going to win the tournament. Don't make big bets on who's going to win the region. There is no value to be had. Let me give you the math behind why there's no value to be had. You get an undervalued team and you're like, dude, I'm getting these guys at 30-1. They could win it all. And they're like a 5 seed. All right. So even if that 5 seed wins in the first round, which is no given. All right. Then they got to win 5 more games, and they're a 5 seed. So they're going to be playing 4s and 2s and 1s, and maybe they'll get an 8 along the way, but you get where I'm going. They're going to be an underdog more than likely in their next 5 games. Even if by some miracle, the bracket opened up for them and they got, a St. Peter's game and some other games where they got teams where they're actually favored in a few of their games. At the most wildly optimistic scenario would be, on average, they'd be pick 'em their next 5 games. Well, if they're a pick 'em in the next 5 games, then their chance of winning is 1/2 to the 5th, or 1 in 32. You see where I'm going. So even if they make the final 32, at best they have a 32-1 chance, 31-1 of winning the tournament. And more likely, if they have a murderer's row and have to play the good teams, it should be like 60, 70, 80-1. And you're only getting 35-1. It's just woefully inadequate.
Got it. All right. What's the other one that you shouldn't do?
So don't bet the team to win even the region. Same problem, same issue. If you just played the mechanical parlay and bet that team, took your money, bet them to win the first game, cashed your ticket, reinvested, bet them to win the next game, you'll wind up with a whole lot more money.
Explain that, Steve, because that's obviously your do, is if you like a team, the mechanical parlay. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so if you like Gonzaga, for instance, to win the tournament, all right, instead of betting the Zags at 18-1, you start with $100. Well, you bet them to win round 1. Well, they're going to be, You're going to bet 100 to win $6 against Grand Canyon. So then you cash it. Now you got $106. You bet Gonzaga against TCU to win. Well, now you're laying minus 165. So now the $106, you cash that ticket. Now you got $170. Then round 3, you bet Gonzaga, pick them, whoever they're playing. You invest $170. You see where I'm going. That 170 will grow to 330. Then it'll grow to 800. Then it'll grow to 1600, and then it'll grow to like 4,000 by the time you're done. And you can, maybe that's too optimistic, but by the time you get done, that $100 is going to grow to 4,000. You're going to get 40 to 1 on Gonzaga. Maybe it's a little high, like I said, versus only getting like an 18 to 1 if you bet it in the one-time shot in the futures pool.
Got it. How come people don't know that? They don't listen to this podcast. They just don't know that that's what you should do.
They want to have fun. The way I'm describing it, it's a lot like a JOB. And if you're only betting $5 anyways, just throw it in there and you like to have your ticket. Hey, this is the team I'm betting on. Ross, every year people from Chicago, nicest people in the world, come out to Vegas and they bet the Cubs. Even when the Cubs stunk, they would bet the Cubs 20 to 1 and 12 to 1 to win the World Series just to have that ticket year after year after year when the Cubs weren't even making the playoffs.
That's funny. All right. Do you have any other dues?
Yes. The dues, I would say bet live wagering. We're not really sure our confidence level. Some of these teams are from different regions geographically. It's not going to be unusual that you're going to see teams. You might have a game lined at 150 for a total, and it's getting played at a really slow pace. It's much slower than what we expected. You might see an 8-point underdog that's playing evenly against another team, and it's obvious as you're watching the game. So I would encourage all to bet live and believe your eyes. Tend to believe whatever is happening on the screen is more likely than what the pre-flop algorithm number was that we're really guessing, especially on a lot of these totals. Another dues, look to unders. Historically, unders have been the way to go. Really important games. Teams play tight to start the game. In fact, first half unders, bold prediction. If you played every single tournament first half under, you'll wind up making money. This has been true almost every tournament.
Interesting. Anything else, Steve, that we need to know about March Madness, the NCAA Tournament?
I would prefer dogs to favorites. Historically, underdogs have covered last 5 years 54%. It doesn't sound like a big number, but it makes sense. This is the one time of the year the public takes over, and the public money is all coming in on the public teams. You know, the Indianas, the Gonzagas, the Texases, the Houstons. And because of that, all the point spreads get a little bit inflated, especially Friday night, because everyone's coming to Vegas, they're coming to town. And the later it gets Thursday, and then on Friday night, more the juices get flowing. The public's betting more and more money. It is rarely wrong to play the dogs on the Friday night games in Las Vegas, often at inflated point spreads.
Interesting. You know what else is interesting, Steve? I'll be watching these games drinking Labatt Blue Light. Not many things go better together than watching March Madness and drinking Labatt Blue Light with your friends or by yourself or with your kids. I'll be watching and drinking Labatt Blue Light Thursday at 4:40 when my Princeton Tigers take on Arizona. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York.
And that's
Let's
what
get to
good
an email
dads
question,
do.
Steve.
That's what good dads do, Ross. They don't drink with their friends. They drink with their children.
Oh, man. All right. One of my favorite things we get to do is you, the listener, especially if you take advantage of any of the sponsors that you see over at rosstucker.com on the sponsor page, or if you sign up to be a Tuckhead at patreon.com/RTmedia to get all of our NFL bets in black and white, you get to ask Steve a question. It's Ask Steve.
Ever wanted to ask a professional sports bettor a question? It's time to Ask Steve.
All right, Steve. This comes to us from Andy. Hey, Steve and Ross. I love listening to the podcast every week. Your best bets almost always hit, and those are my highest unit bets. Steve frequently talks about getting to the numbers as early as possible. My first question for Steve is, what sources do you use to get the breaking news earliest? Is it ESPN or specific other sources?
Yeah, in fact, Ross, you asked me this about college basketball, and I got to say, I'm kind of like, they have like the 6 degrees of Bacon that everyone knows Kevin Bacon. So I know guys that know where to get the information, and I tend to be getting that information from other guys. We share information, and obviously they're getting it from Adam Schefter and all kinds of different beat reporters, but I'm not the one that's actually collecting that information. I'm just getting it from the guys who are getting it, and they're providing it to me as far as beating the number. Now, there's 2 ways to beat the number. One is to get that information as it's breaking throughout the week. The second way is to do what's called the bottom-up method, where you run all your numbers on all these teams, do your power ratings, you're ready to go against the openers. This is what I do betting the XFL, which we haven't spoken about very much. So examples of beating the number, right when the number came out, Sunday night, I had my numbers ready. The Houston Roughnecks are the best team in the XFL, but they're overrated because they've had such a crumb-bum easy strength of schedule, including playing the pathetic Orlando Guards twice. And so Seattle was catching 5 at open. I bet Seattle immediately as one of the bets that I make. And I bet the Vegas Vipers over again. Vegas has played 3 games, the last 3 games. One was in the rain a little bit, one was in a wind tunnel, and one was in a monsoon. The Vegas Vipers are a dead nut over team, so I played them over 39. They're currently 41.5. I'd still lean over. So that's the bottom up. The bottom up method is what I use in sports that I actively handicap, like NFL, XFL, and bet openers. But the top down method is one where you're just getting that information from somebody else and betting based upon what someone is telling you.
2 thoughts on that. One is, I think Twitter is the greatest information resource ever created. Anything that happens, someone posts it to Twitter immediately, any news, because it like timestamps it, time and date stamps it. So it's proof that they're the first one to put the information out there. And so there is no, but I don't care what industry you're in. People are like, I'm not on Twitter. I was talking to a buddy this past weekend about it out in Colorado. You need to be on Twitter if you want the information as it happens. So that would be my recommendation. Go ahead, Steve.
You really need 2 Twitters. So you need one Twitter because I want to see like the pizza that Ross Tucker is eating at night. All right. Well, I'd follow you anyways, but you know where I'm going, that there's certain people I'm following personally that aren't even posting about the NFL. And then I've got my professional betting Twitter that only follows beat writers and guys that are tweeting about information. And you know what? If they tweet about a barbecue, they get 1 barbecue tweet. When they put up the 2nd and 3rd and 4th, then they go off that list because it's too much clutter. I can't have any clutter on that Twitter. That's all business.
Yeah, that's actually why I don't follow very many people. I only have 1 account, and it's straight business. I forget the other point I was going to make. Oh, how are you doing on XFL, Steve?
XFL's been good. I 3 years ago, XFL, I went 9-0-1, and this year I'm 7-3. So I've just, for whatever reason, I've thrived in the XFL. But like you mentioned, we talk all the time about winning. College basketball, although I'm on a nice run in college basketball, I'm still slightly below 50% for the year, which is very unusual. So I've had a great NBA year the last 2 years, and I know the college basketball way better than the NBA, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't. It's manifested itself into some good closing line value. Most recently, so frustrating, Ross. So I get information that Ohio State's gifted freshman's out. So I bet big on Michigan State, and the line steams up from 3.5 to 6.5. I bet Michigan State on the money line and clobber the closing number. No good. Sparty, no good. No show against Ohio State. That's kind of a synopsis of how my year has gone. Great CLV closing line value and losing tickets.
Is there a max on the XFL games you can bet?
Yes, and the limits are not nearly as high as on the NFL, but Circus Sports puts up their opening number every Sunday night, half an hour after the league ends, the last game, 3,000 on sides, 1,000 on totals. That's their opening limits that they go ahead and take. So they're taking at least circa as big bets. Other books, not so much. They view it as more, they're letting their customers play it because people want to watch the games and have something on it, but they might take 500 to 1,000 on it.
Andy had a second question to wrap things up today. What are your opinions on cashing out early? Is it ever advantageous?
Typically, no. If you have a big bet on something, and for instance, Sacramento to win the division, I know that was like 80-1 earlier in the year, and they're very likely to win. And it makes sense, right? Let me go ahead and accept the cash out. But the problem is that Dastardly Bookie typically short pays you when they give you that cash out option. So it is rarely correct. You're getting shorted too much to use the cash out option.
Check that man out on social media at Fezzik Sports. He is excellent. It'll be fun to follow his tweets during March Madness. I am at Ross Tucker NFL, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You can check us out at Ross Tucker Pod if you want the highlight clips of this show and others. We'll have Andrew Brandt on today's Ross Tucker Football Podcast talking about everything going on in the NFL so far. We'll have the Fantasy Feast podcast tomorrow, breaking down some of these new places that guys have gone from free agency, from a fantasy perspective. And of course, Greg Cosell will join me on Thursday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Don't miss the College Draft Podcast, by the way, because my guy Emery, he's got some strong opinions that might help you betting on the NFL draft. Other than that, good luck, everybody. Hope you guys win some money in March Madness.
Thanks for listening to the Even Money Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, the Fantasy Feast, Business of Sports, and the College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.